Ladies and gentlemen, it is time to react to some of your guys' unpopular opinions about the launch of Black Ops 6 Zombies. I will admit, a lot of these I wouldn't really classify as hot takes, to be honest, but some of them are. Some of them I just wanted to include because I thought it'd be interesting to talk about. First one here comes from Jack Lonan. This is by far the best Zombies launch we've ever had, and it's not even close. The gameplay is fun, the storyline is interesting, the community is engaged, and the maps appeal to both casual and hardcore players. Plus, the game is quite stable in terms of crashing. When it comes to actual launches, not even BO3 comes close, as it was not as refined at its launch. Personally, for me, I wouldn't call this my favorite launch of Zombies ever, but it's definitely up there. I would definitely put it in the top 5, maybe even the top 4. I still think Black Ops 3 is the best launch of Zombies, and I know that's definitely going to have some people confused because, yes, a lot of people were complaining about Shadows of Evil on launch. A lot of people had their issues with it. I was not one of those people. I was in awe of Shadows of Evil, having so much fun with it, and it was a groundbreaking experience in Zombies, at least for me personally. And the Giant was there as just like a side map to mess around on as well, but for me, that is easily going to be the best launch. Black Ops 4 is probably a close second, and that also might confuse a lot of people because, of course, there was a lot of issues with crashing and such. I personally did not experience crashes in Black Ops 4's launch. I actually don't think I crashed a single time, except for once while I was playing in Custom Mutations, and I made it so it was Brutus only on Blood of the Dead. Like, of course it's going to cause a crash when you have 50 different Brutuses coming at you at once. Like, that was expected. But when it comes to doing Easter eggs and other stuff like that, I didn't crash at all. I was on Xbox, didn't happen, and I didn't really go for high rounds, so I guess it's probably why I didn't crash. I was just doing the Easter eggs, but those were very smooth for me, and I didn't really have many issues. So I personally had a great time with having 4 maps at launch, and I was personally really loving those maps. Even to this day, I still like those maps, but I don't think I like them as much as I did at launch, but I was in awe of that experience. And then Infinite Warfare with Zombies in Spaceland, I mean, that was a groundbreaking experience for me personally as well. It's my favorite map of all time, so I had so much fun with that. Black Ops 6, though, the launch has been very solid. There has been some issues with me when it comes to stability. I know a lot of people haven't had any sort of crashing issues. I haven't had any crashing issues necessarily, but there's been a lot of glitches otherwise, like just complete lag in solo matches somehow, which is just what's been happening with COD HQ games in general, unfortunately. But I definitely think this launch is definitely up there. There's so much content to mess around with. The maps are fun, the gameplay is smooth. That is definitely a good thing. Next opinion comes from DJAK. DLC 1 is probably the most important map to see how the rest of the life cycle will look like, and maybe even for COD 2025, which is rumored to be BO7. So I actually agree with this quite a bit. I think DLC 1 is usually the most important map. A lot of people might think it's the launch maps, but I feel like DLC 1 really tells you the direction of where the game might be leading. And of course, that's not always the case. I mean, look at Black Ops 2. Obviously, Die Rise was not indicative of the rest of the DLC of Black Ops 2. But when you look at some other games, I think DLC 1 does set the stage quite substantially, and especially because DLC 1 is coming so soon, we're literally getting it next month, it is very, very important. And for me personally, if the map is more similar to Terminus, then we are in for a good DLC season. If it's more similar to Liberty Falls, then unfortunately I think we're probably not going to be in for that good of a DLC season. At least for me. I like Liberty Falls, don't get me wrong, but I don't think Liberty Falls should be the style of map they go for with the DLC maps. Right now the rumor is that we're going to get 4 DLC maps. It doesn't say any more than that, so I think we're just going to get, 4 regular maps and that's about it. I don't think there's going to be any extra bonus maps or anything like that. So hopefully these maps are going to have the same quality and depth of Terminus, or maybe even more than that. Next unpopular opinion comes from Video Vigilante. I kind of prefer Liberty Falls to Terminus. Don't get me wrong, Terminus is an amazing map too, but I just really vibe with Liberty Falls. I love BO2 Town, and Liberty Falls feels like an expanded version of that, which is amazing. I love how it's so easy to jump in and just slay. It's great to have a simple casual map alongside Terminus. The side Easter eggs are also incredible. The bowling Easter egg is my favorite, but there's so many fun ones that are easy to do, which is great. So obviously I don't agree with this. I've said many times before over the past week that I do definitely prefer Terminus over Liberty Falls, but I definitely respect the opinion, and I think a lot of people are going to share this opinion if you prefer a simpler map. That's kind of just how it is. The map is obviously a lot easier to get into. It's a lot easier. I wouldn't say it's necessarily like a ton easier when you get into the high rounds, because there is a lot of mangler spam on Liberty Falls, maybe even more so than on Terminus. So the high rounding, I wouldn't say is like a lot easier, but just generally speaking, the rounds are much simpler to get through, and the Easter eggs a lot easier, and the side Easter eggs are also a lot simpler too. There's not nearly as many complex side Easter eggs. I wouldn't say Terminus really has that many either, but there's a couple more on Terminus that maybe take a little bit longer to do. I definitely am okay with them going in the direction of doing one harder, more complex map and then one simpler, easier map. I do feel like they didn't go far enough into that direction though. Terminus really doesn't feel nearly as complex as I was hoping. I do think it's definitely closer in that direction, but I wouldn't put it on the same level as like the really complex maps through Call of Duty's history. And I think if they really wanted to make it clear that these maps are supposed to be extremely different, they probably should have gone a little bit further with it. But I do think in general that concept makes sense, so you have one map for each style of player. I do think it would be better though if they made both maps casual accessible, which I do think both of them are, but also both maps have enough complicated and complex things within them that you can do. And a good way to do that would be through side Easter eggs. So obviously I'm totally fine with there being a lot of easy side Easter eggs that are simple to do, like the bowling one, for example. You just shoot 4 things around the map, or 5 things, whatever, and you get into the bowling thing. That's fine. But I do think Liberty Falls just should have had maybe like 1 or 2 other side Easter eggs that are a bit more complex, maybe include some sort of puzzle, obviously make them optional, but just having those extra things just to give a more hardcore player something to do, I think would have been fun and interesting. And that is my only main complaint with Liberty Falls right now, is that I feel like it could have done that, but it really just didn't bother to. Next unpopular opinion comes from Thunderstruck115. Liberty Falls is only a few notches above Cold War's maps in terms of map design, but it's still so much more fun due to the massive improvements to the mechanics. So I definitely agree with this. I think Liberty Falls is very similar to Cold War's maps in terms of just its simplicity and how it's designed, how it's very open. I definitely think the map fits perfectly in Cold War. Like, you could take Liberty Falls, put it in Cold War, and it would probably work just fine and feel very similar to the other maps in that game. But obviously having BO6's mechanics, which are a lot better and a lot more difficult, I wouldn't say like nearly as difficult as some people are saying, but definitely more difficult than Cold War, it makes the experience a lot better. So although Liberty Falls itself I wouldn't say is much better than the Cold War maps, I definitely think it is more fun because of what you're mentioning here, the mechanics just being a lot better. Next take comes from Joshua Marty. BO6 story so far is more interesting to me than BO3. BO3 is mostly about killing the Ultimus crew one by one and doesn't have as much of a mystery as the Black Ops 6 story, with the Liberty Falls cutscene ending, Maya's unknown brother, and etc. I personally do think I was more interested in the BO3 story, at least at this current moment, but I do think the reveal of what we got at the end of the Terminus cutscene, and spoilers for people who haven't seen the ending cutscene for Terminus yet, but the whole thing with Chaos being revealed to have some sort of role to play in this BO6 story. Now, we don't know exactly what that role is going to be. It can totally end up being something not that significant, which I'm really worried it's not going to be significant, because I hope it is. I hope it's a big part of the story going forward. That would make me way more interested in the Dark Ether story, to the point where it might even get more interesting than Black Ops 3. That's entirely possible. But at this current moment, I do still think I was more attached to what was going on in BO3, but I totally respect the intrigue in the story here, and I definitely think there is a lot to be interested in. But I think Cold War just didn't really do enough to grab me onto the story itself, and so since it's taken so long for me to finally get into the Dark Ether story, I don't think I'm quite there yet where I'm like really invested, but I think it's definitely possible that it'll happen soon. Next take comes from Cowboy Joe. BO6 Zombies is probably the most fun zombies for high rounding in Zombies history. It's fast-paced and challenging while not being too much like Vanguard. It also has so much replayability because of the different augments and loadouts you can make, and it's way easier to get the gobblegums you actually want because it's faster than the Dr. Monty machine thing, and they are mostly all useful. Also, I think the loadout system is actually good in this game. I despised it in past games, but in this one, the guns fall off by around 6 or 7 anyways, so it doesn't even matter at that point what gun you choose, and I think it's great. I switch it out for a box or wall weapon most of the time anyways. The new punching perk is really underwhelming, however. So let's go through this one by one, because a couple different points that was made here. First of all, in terms of it being the most fun zombies for high rounding, I haven't gotten like really far to the high rounds yet. The farthest I've gotten is like round 50, so I don't know how the far high rounds are just yet. I will definitely try to get to those eventually. I've been so focused on Easter egg related stuff recently. But I think definitely like the 40s and 50s where I was at, it's pretty fun. I don't think it's necessarily the best, but I think it's definitely close to it. There's just a couple things they have to change in order to make it the best. First of all, I definitely think they need to do something about the points, and I've talked about this many times before. There's a couple other opinions that are going to pop up in this video that all revolve around the point system, but I think the difficulty of getting points isn't really a type of difficulty I enjoy. Like, obviously I want the game to be harder, but I don't want the reason it's harder to be because I just constantly don't have any points. And I think if they were to just add ways of earning more points specifically through the zombies, it would definitely help. And I don't mean just increase the amount of points you get or decrease the prices of things. No, give us like actual specific skillful ways of earning more points. And obviously the classic point system would essentially be that. But there's definitely other ways to implement that. Maybe give us an attachment on full auto weapons that gives you the classic point system on those weapons, but in return, the weapon deals less damage or something like that. Just something to give us ways of maximizing points beyond just getting the points that the game wants us to have at that point in the game. There is definitely a problem with boss spam right now as well, which I think they probably will patch at some point because a lot of people have been criticizing that. But I do like in general that it is more difficult than Cold War. Cold War's high rounds was way too easy. Were they fun? Yes, but they were so easy. It really didn't feel rewarding to get to any high round. It never really felt that rewarding to me, at least. So I definitely like the fact that these high roundings are a lot harder. And yes, there's a lot to mess around with, a lot of different augments, a lot of different gobblegums and special abilities. That's all really cool. When it comes to loadouts, I kind of agree for the most part, but I'm kind of slowly changing my opinion on that because I did share the opinion that the loadout system in this game isn't nearly as bad because the weapons fall off so fast, so you're more likely to hit the box and get new weapons. I still agree with that, but I feel like once you start learning like what's the meta guns in the game, which we're starting to learn now, like for me, it's the ASG shotgun. That shotgun is incredible. You are actually better off just sticking with it and then just quickly upgrading the rarity as soon as possible, which is very easy to do. But I still do usually hit the box for a secondary weapon, like that's hopefully a blue rarity or higher, and just mess with that until I get enough salvage to start upgrading the other shotgun. So I definitely am more likely to hit the box in this game than I was in Cold War. That's definitely good, but I don't think it's necessarily on the same level as classic zombies. And to the last point Cowboy Joe made about the punching perk being really underwhelming, which of course is Melee Macchiato, I would 100% agree. That perk is really bad and doesn't really help whatsoever. Hopefully they improve it over time because I definitely think it could be a lot better if they just buffed it. Next take comes from Flipsy. The gameplay loop needs to be tweaked. I feel like making the zombies bullet sponges while keeping it on points per kill makes it hard to progress. Yeah, I've said this before, I agree. Like, this is definitely an issue with the game currently, where I feel like the weapons don't really do enough damage in the high rounds, and because you're not actively getting points as you're shooting them, you get into this really annoying loop where you're just constantly going to get more ammo on your weapon, and it's only killing enough of the zombies to get you enough points to just rebuy ammo again when you run out of ammo. It's such a frustrating loop to get stuck in. You obviously avoid that loop if you just are smarter with your points early on in the game, but I don't like a system that kind of punishes you for trying out different weapons mid-game. You're kind of like completely punished for switching your weapon later in the rounds. You need to stick with the weapon and keep it all the way through, or else you're just going to screw yourself over. And I don't really like that loop currently. I think they definitely need to do something either with the point system or maybe just increasing the damage of the weapons. I personally would prefer if they target the point system itself and just change that around. I feel like just buffing the weapons wouldn't really fix the core problem, at least for me personally. Would it make it at least a little bit better? Sure, maybe, because I don't really like difficulty surrounding just the enemies being like bullet sponges. I kind of agree with that, but I also think that's kind of just what zombies has always been. Like, you go back to the old games, it's always just kind of been the zombies have so much health, and that's how it happens in the later rounds. You have to start using other weapons. But I think they definitely can find a way to make it challenging while the zombies aren't complete bullet sponges either. They can definitely find a way. I don't think they're like too crazy in this game. If you have a really solid weapon that's fully maxed out, it's going to be killing decently well. But yeah, of course, when you get into that whole situation where your weapon's not fully maxed out and you really can't get enough points to fully max it out because you're not killing enough zombies to actually get enough points, then yes, it starts to become kind of frustrating. Next hot take comes from Code 6 Beluga. The Liberty Falls Easter egg ending cutscene is bad and a real letdown. What happened to Richtofen or the mansion? At least the map isn't that bad, to be honest. So I don't like fully agree. I wouldn't go as far as to call it bad, but I definitely think it was a bit underwhelming and a bit disappointing, especially based on what the intro cutscene built up. We had this whole cutscene with Richtofen and even Samantha in that lab looking room, and Samantha actually ended up playing a role in Terminus, interestingly enough, but she didn't play a role in Liberty Falls at all. Neither did Richtofen, and I thought that was a little disappointing. I'm sure obviously they're going to play a role in the future DLC maps, but I was just thinking to myself, like, well, where are they in this map? Why have them be this big part of the intro cutscene if they're not really going to be a part of the Easter egg? Instead, we have this new character, Panos, to talk about. And yeah, it was an interesting character. I liked learning about this character and just getting to see his conversations. And I definitely think there's some cool stuff with that cutscene. I like the idea of him kind of like taking our essence or something and becoming a person, even though he was previously a dark ether entity of some sort, or ghost, whatever you want to call it. I thought that was interesting, and I thought it was an interesting way to like kill off the operators, basically, or at least banish them to the dark ether. But again, it was just a little underwhelming given the fact that there was so much else that was being built up to that map. We got another take here from Thunderstruck115. The fact that I can lag like crazy when playing solo is a massive problem with Black Ops 6 Zombies. I genuinely didn't think this would be an unpopular take, but the amount of people that have resorted to harassment over me pointing this out is insane. That is insane that people would be harassing you over that. But yeah, the lagging issue is pretty bad right now, and it really just depends on the person and the account. Not everyone is having lag issues, and I think that's really important to make clear, because yes, I've seen a lot of people that, you know, I'll mention that I'm having lagging issues, and then someone will be like, oh, I'm not lagging, so it must not be a problem. Like, people have that mentality, and it's so frustrating. Like, I can clearly see that Black Ops 4's launch was clearly a problem. There was a lot of crashes for a lot of people. If I was coming at someone who was having crashing issues and going, oh, I didn't crash, therefore it was actually not a big deal, that's ridiculous. That makes no sense. Obviously, it was a problem for the game. Now, it might not have been affecting my experience, therefore it didn't affect my launch experience, which was definitely good for me, but it does not change the fact that the game was still having a problem. And the same thing is happening now. There are clearly lag issues with Black Ops 6, and it's not just zombies, it's also multiplayer and even campaign, which is crazy. But yes, all modes are now online. There was really no way to play them offline in any sort of offline servers, so you were always online, which means lag is possible even in solo matches. And yes, it is really frustrating. At least when lag happens online, it's like, okay, you know, you're online, it happens sometimes, but in solo, it's so frustrating, and it isn't because of your Wi-Fi either. Like, I have really great Wi-Fi, but even I'm experiencing a lot of lag in all modes in Black Ops 6, and it's been the case for most of the COD HQ games. I had this happen for Modern Warfare 3 as well. I think COD HQ as an application is just really buggy, and hopefully this is like priority number one for Treyarch to get fixed, because it definitely is something that needs to be fixed. So next take is coming from AHY. Now this is a long one. We have a lot of things that are being said in this opinion here. There's a lot of different points. So we're going to go through it one by one and discuss it. So this person says, everyone in my opinion is just in the honeymoon phase. Once that's up, people will see that there are still so many flaws that'll mean the game just isn't sustainable or fun long-term, because it's missing certain things that give the maps their identities, or it's just straight up got some flaws, such as, and then this person goes into some flaws. So first of all, I want to mention the whole honeymoon phase thing before we actually get into the flaws that are being mentioned here, because I do agree with that actually. Like, surprisingly, even though I'm loving BO6, the honeymoon phase is a real thing. You cannot tell me it's not, because it happens all the freaking time. A new game is a new game. It's fresh in people's minds. People are having a fun time because it's new. That happened with literally, I could say every Call of Duty. Even the Call of Duties that people generally don't like that much, you still had a lot of people enjoying their time at launch. I mean, even Black Ops 4, which I know is hailed as like this awful launch experience because of all the crashing, and people were definitely pissed off with the crashing. I remember people saying positive things about the game otherwise. There are many, many different YouTubers I can find videos of right now of them saying they like the game except for the crashing. They like the mechanics except for the crashing. That was like the only thing they didn't like. And then a couple months later, suddenly they don't really like the mechanics anymore, and now suddenly Black Ops 4 is really not that great. And that's completely fine. It's actually a normal way to experience like things in life. There's a honeymoon phase that actually exists for a lot of things. And obviously there's plenty of exceptions. There's exceptions to everything, and obviously Vanguard would be the exception here. I don't think many people were saying good things about that at launch. But when you have a game like Modern Warfare Zombies is a good example. There was just so much to that game at launch that obviously people were stuck in this honeymoon phase of, oh my god, there's so much to explore, so much to do, and once you do all of it, you realize there's really not much more to it, so maybe I don't want to play this anymore. That's kind of how a lot of people experience that game, and that could be just because people are so attached to grinds. So once they get beyond that grind, they don't really care about the gameplay loop anymore. And that could be happening with BO6. Who knows? I don't personally think it is, because I do think they're going to give us a decent amount of post-launch content. And I think there is a decent gameplay loop to BO6. Personally, I do enjoy it. So I do think even I will probably play it a decent amount, even beyond getting past all the grinds. Now, will it be on the same level as BO3, Infinite Warfare, or BO4 for me? I don't know, it's yet to be seen, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see. So let's go over AHY's main points here. So the first one is that all the weapons are just the main BO6 weapons. There's no map specific or even just alternate weapons, as in the past we'd have maybe the Marshals on Zetsubo no Shima, PPSH on Garad Krovi. Even in BO4 amongst normal weapons, we still have the alternate weapons like the Trench Bucket or MP40. It gives more of a reason to use the box, or at least provides some map identity via exclusive map weapons. So this is a point I agree with. I don't necessarily think it's like game breaking to the point where it's just going to ruin the experience and make it not have that longevity or replayability, but I do think it is something I agree with. I would like some more map unique things, and it doesn't necessarily even have to be weapons. It could just be other things, and I do think there are some map unique things on Liberty Falls on Terminus, but not enough. There's not really enough that kind of set them apart. Obviously, the gameplay loop of the maps are very different. One is a lot simpler and easier. One's a bit, more close quarters, maybe a little more complicated, not nearly as much as, Bleep BO4, but it still has that complicated nature to it in some ways, but it doesn't have nearly as many unique things. Just off the top of my head, the Wonder Weapon's unique. There's a unique item with the Cursed Talisman through the side Easter egg. There's, I guess, obviously unique Easter eggs and story quotes and all that. And then there's 2 perk machines that aren't on Liberty Falls, but you could get those perks regardless through the Wonder Fizz anyways. And I really can't think of anything else off the top of my head, other than I guess like the boss zombies. There's a couple of bosses that are unique, like the Amalgam's only on Terminus and the Abomination's only on Liberty Falls. But again, that's pretty much it. There's really not a lot of map unique things in zombies anymore. And I get why they do that, but I obviously disagree with it pretty heavily. They want these experiences to be built in a way to where you can play any map you want at any times and not worry about missing out on certain things. And I can kind of get that, but at the same time, like, I think it's good to encourage players to actually play all the maps in the game, like you would be encouraged back in the day with Black Ops 2, Black Ops 3, Infinite Warfare, Black Ops 4, where there's so many map unique things on certain maps that you are directly encouraged to jump into those other maps and try them out if you think, you want to experience those other things. But in this game, I mean, if you want to use the Mangler injection, you can use it on either map. If you want to use the Mangler cannon, you can use it on either map. If you want to use any gun in the game, you can use it on any map. There's really not as many map specific things. And yeah, I definitely think that is one of my main criticism with modern zombies, is that we do need some more map specific things. Another point they make is that there is a lack of things to do. You get the power and pack-a-punch on Mad Easy, which is fair enough, but before you had some sort of little step or unique setup which built the early game up a bit. Now it's just gone, which is fine if the mid-game built up was there, but by mid-game build-up, I mean once you have power and pack-a-punch on, you and your team can usually work towards something that isn't the main Easter egg that takes a couple of rounds. Traditionally, it's been buildables like the shield, or acquiring some sort of extra weapon like the specialists from BO3, or a Wonder Weapon upgrade quest, bows, staffs, gauntlets, krakens, etc. Now everything's just a free pack-a-punch, no upgrade quest, no nothing. So I can actually completely understand this mentality, and I mostly agree with it. I think this was one of my biggest issues with Cold War. I felt like there just wasn't enough things to do on the map, and some players don't care. They're playing to just jump in, kill zombies, that's it. Myself, I get bored of that. I get so bored of the just constant flow of just jumping in to kill zombies and not having nothing else to do. I like having quests. I like having things to go for, objectives of some sort. As long as they're optional objectives and they're fun, then they're great. And of course, they need to give you good rewards as well. And Black Ops 3 and Black Ops 4, Infinite Warfare, these games did a great job at that. There was always so many things to do on the maps. Cold War was a massive step backwards where I felt like there was just not nearly enough to do. And I think Black Ops 6 is definitely a step above Cold War, pretty substantially, I would say. There's a lot of side Easter eggs to do, but the side Easter eggs are also very easy with, some exceptions. There's like one on Terminus with the Cursed Talisman that does actually take a while, and it's pretty fun to do as well. So I like that quest a lot. But then you have other quests that are as simple as just shooting a couple things around the map. Like, they're not difficult to do. I wouldn't really call it a quest necessarily. It's more of a hidden Easter egg thing that you just get, and you get some sort of cool reward for it for a limited period of time usually, or sometimes for longer period of time. It just depends on the Easter egg. But yeah, obviously Black Ops 3 had way more than that. I mean, there were so many side Easter eggs that usually took a while to do. There was obviously long quests for certain things like wonder weapons and specialists. I mean, getting the sword on Shadows of Evil usually takes your entire game, which I think it was good. Like, I think that was fun. The fact that I was, going through different steps that were fun to do as well through each round to upgrade the sword, and then at the end when you got it, it was a pretty cool reward to have, and then you could kind of just mess around and do whatever after the fact. And these were always optional things. You didn't really need the sword whatsoever. You didn't need to do all these Easter eggs. They were all optional. And I think Black Ops 6, like I said, there are definitely a lot more than Cold War. I don't think it quite reaches the lengths of BO3 and BO4, even if in terms of quantity, there is definitely more things to do in terms of like side Easter eggs. If we're just counting each individual side Easter egg, Terminus does have the most side Easter eggs ever, for sure. But when you're talking about the depth of them and the quality, I would not say it's on the level of BO3 or 4 just yet. I think it's definitely close to it, and I'm definitely happy about that. But yes, I don't think it's necessarily there yet. I think one of my biggest concerns was honestly how easy the quests were to do as well, because there were some quests back in like Black Ops 3 and 4 that it took me a while to get done because they just weren't that easy to do. And I like that. I like that it took me, you know, a couple different tries to get through it. But on Black Ops 6, I pretty much did every quest in one single game. I actually did a video of me doing every single side Easter egg in one game on Liberty Falls, and then I did it again on Terminus. And yeah, I got pretty much every single one of them done just within one single match. So I would say, you know, I want them to be a little more challenging, just a little more complicated, stuff that you're not going to do every game. I think it's good to have a balance though. I think it's good to have a lot of quests that you can easily do every game. It doesn't really require much work, but then also have some in there that you're probably not going to do every game because they are quite difficult to do, but make sure they're rewarding and give really good stuff out of it. But I do think the core gameplay of BO6 is good enough that you don't even really necessarily need a bunch of quests to enjoy yourself. There obviously is like the SAM trials to do, which are pretty fun, and obviously there's a lot to grind for currently. But I do get the point here where once you're done with all the grinds and you're through all the augments, you've gotten, you know, your max camos and stuff like that, I do see the point here that there isn't going to be as much of that charm in like the early round setup that those older games had, at least like Black Ops 3 and Black Ops 4 in particular, because of the fact that it is pretty easy to set up in general. You know, obviously, I just don't think it's necessarily there yet. But I think it's such a step above Cold War that I'm not necessarily like mad about anything here. I'm just happy that it's better than Cold War. I think that's basically where I'm at right now. Like, yes, it's not on the level of BO3 and 4, but I'm just happy it's better than Cold War. Next up, they say that Pack-a-Punch and the weapon system itself is fundamentally flawed. Spawning with a loadout has meant we never experience new starting pistols and experiencing how they fit a map, linking back to point 1 about map-specific weapons, giving a map its identity, like the Mauser, Bloodhound, etc. But also the fact it comes with a rarity system. Because of it, you never really were incentivized to hit the box. Why would you? You can still spawn in with your perfect gun and just upgrade it through the match. Most of the times, you will always be above the box in regards to the rarity tier, as in while I'll have a purple gun and it's still giving me blue and green guns. A good change could be it only gives you a higher rarity or equal depending on your gun. It would help mitigate my next point, which is just that the rarity and pack system is just crap. It never does enough damage for the round you're on, especially towards the very last tiers. It's so damn expensive salvage wise and point wise. 50k for a gun to be fully done is outrageous, which is why you'll never hit the box. I mean, think about it. If I've put 20k for up to tier 2 pack, why would I swap that out for another gun so I have to dump another 20k, which takes so long to get, thus taking even longer to get 30k for the final tier. So you're shooting sponges for way too long in the later rounds, or you just can't afford perks because the perk system has an ever-increasing cost. So yeah, I've mentioned this before. I do kind of agree. I think one of the big issues with this game is the whole point problem in the later rounds, and the point system is mostly to do with that. Also the fact that the weapons maybe aren't dealing enough damage that they should be. But when it comes to the other points here, like with the starting pistol, I agree. Like, these were issues I had with Cold War as well, and I still would say I have issues with them in BO6, and I hope they make changes in the future. But I think it's just a system that they're going to be sticking with most likely for BO6, at least with the core game mode. Maybe they'll give us a classic mode in the future, but in general, I definitely think I understand this criticism, and I do agree. Like, it's one of those things where I agree, but it doesn't ruin the game for me. It's not going to completely demolish the fun I could have with it. But yeah, would I prefer we had a specific starting pistol, just like we did in the old days? Yes, I would. I do think, for me at least, I have been actually starting with the starting pistol most games, because the starting pistol is actually one of the best guns in the game when pack-a-punched. That is, of course, the, I think it's like the G45, something like that, the pistol that turns into the Mustang and Fourth. It is incredibly good in this game, therefore I've been starting with it most games. So yeah, it's not really the classic starting pistol feel though, because you don't have the classic point system, so it doesn't really feel the same, but in general I do think I'm still encouraged to start with that, or of course the ASG shotgun, just depends. But I do think based on what your second gun's going to be, unless you're of course going to get the wonder weapon, yes, you could hit the box to try and get a better weapon at the start, but of course you're not guaranteed that Every now and then it does happen though. I've had some games where I get really lucky and get an orange gun within the first 10 rounds through the box, and it's pretty insane when that happens because obviously it's going to save you a lot of salvage. And the last point here is about the point system as well, just like we were talking about before. I'm not going to read all of this because it pretty much reiterates what I've already been talking about in this video quite a bit, but if you want to read it, here it is on the screen. Pretty much the same things like I've been saying. There's just definitely a problem with points in this game, and I think the point system definitely needs some sort of change here. And they ended off here essentially just saying that they just want to get their point across because a lot of, fans of the newer games will take this criticism as being, oh, you're just a BO3 fan, you just want BO3 mechanics. But they say here that they actually do think that BO6 can be the best zombies if some of these flaws are fixed. And that is a really important thing to point out because I do think there is a problem with the discussions in the zombies community recently because some people will give criticisms and they'll be immediately dismissed as you're just complaining, you're just mindlessly complaining. I've been hearing that so frequently, and it's really annoying because no, you can give decent criticism, you can give valid criticism while still liking and enjoying the game and thinking it actually has potential to be a lot better. Telling someone to just go back and play BO3 makes no sense. It literally makes no sense. Next take is coming from Mickey the Little. They need to bring back the old point feed. I need my points flying on the side of the screen while obliterating a train. Maybe they can make hits 5 points or even 1 instead of 10, but please bring it back. I agree 1000%. First of all, the whole score feed thing in general, the fact that you either have to put it in the middle of the screen or nowhere at all is kind of frustrating. I wish we could move it to where it was in the original games where it was right next to the points. And of course, if they gave us the old point system back or at least something similar to it, or like I said, some sort of attachment that gives you it, it would be so much more satisfying to see the points just go up really fast, even if it's not necessarily giving you a lot of points at once, but it still is a lot more satisfying than having to fully kill the zombie before you see any points pop up. And yeah, if they were to make it so it was only 1 point per hit, that would still be better than nothing. So I would definitely take that. Next hot take might be the hottest take on here. This is coming from Scorpion is Scorpion. Omni-Movement is one of the worst things to be added to zombies. Hear me out. Zombies always felt janky and a bit sluggish movement side, and that's part of what made the Black Ops 1 and Black Ops 2 era, which was my favorite, have that scary factor that zombies lacked from Advanced Warfare onwards, and Omni-Movement just doesn't make sense in that context. How can I feel scared of zombies hitting me if I can slide cancel, run in 360 degrees, and run into slide, into dive, into prone, and then do it again? This is an interesting take because although I love Omni-Movement, like I completely love it, I love the movement, I love how smooth movement has gotten in Call of Duty, I still kind of understand what they're saying and almost slightly agree. Like, yes, having the sluggish movement isn't really good theoretically, but it does make the game a lot scarier and harder. I'm not gonna go as far as to say like really scary. I don't think zombies ever that scary, to be honest. But in general, do you feel more vulnerable when the movement is more sluggish? Yes, I would say so, actually quite a bit, but I don't think they should force the movement to be sluggish just in order to make that happen. I think there's definitely other ways they can make us more vulnerable, and I think they've done decent attempts at that in Black Ops 6. I definitely think it's a lot harder than what Black Ops Cold War was, but I don't think we're quite there yet. They definitely need to do a couple more things just to push it further in that direction, but I do think in general I get what is being said here. I just don't fully agree that it's necessarily what they should do for the game because I don't want sluggish movement back, regardless of the fact that it might have given the game more of a charm to it. This next take comes from Neo Awakened. Bringing back chaos will backfire in Black Ops 6 for many reasons, but the main reason being the story won't be cohesive with whoever is currently storyboarding, to be honest. We already saw the nightmare with MWZ. Bringing chaos into the mix is going to ruin some of the good writing there, and OG fans are going to be even more outraged. They need to leave the old crews alone, in my opinion, and start new, like what they were trying to do with Weaver. Second reason is that although Chaos had some top tier maps like 9, Ancient Evil, and even the bad ones like Voyage had some amazing atmosphere, if the next map doesn't have that once again, OG fans will be outraged. It needs to capture a mystical theme, and not one map between Cold War and BO6 has that same vibe as BO4. So I can kind of understand what they're trying to say here, but I don't agree like much at all, to be honest. And the reason why is I think at the end of the day, we have to realize that they were likely never going to do anything with Chaos again in the future anyways. They were likely never going to touch it again. They were likely going to leave the story where it was, where it didn't have a conclusive ending whatsoever. So the idea of them bringing that into the Dark Aether story, to me, is better than them not doing anything with it at all. Would I prefer that Chaos just got a continuation just straight from the Chaos story itself? Probably. but I'm completely okay with them kind of mushing the storylines together, because the idea of chaos taking place in the Dark Ether story and just always having taken place there is honestly not that far-fetched at all. Literally all it means is that there's more ways for these zombies to be created. We obviously assumed that the Dark Ether was the thing that was bringing all the zombies in, but now we know that there's this device, the Sentinel artifact, that can also create zombies. And we know there's this whole thing, Premium Materia, which was all in the Chaos story. I love the fact that that stuff is getting brought in now, because we can actually get a conclusive end to the Chaos story. Even if it's not the best ending ever, it's at least an ending, and I think that's better than nothing. And I trust Treyarch to do something interesting with it. And at the very least, it's going to lead us to getting cooler and more interesting maps, at least in my opinion. I think it's highly likely we're going to get to see some really crazy wonder weapons, and that's what I'm hoping to see. I'm hoping to see some really crazy bosses, wonder weapons, you know, all sorts of stuff, map locations. I'm sick of the, you know, military facilities and stuff like that, and hopefully we can move on to some more mythological stuff that the Chaos story has. And there's potential to even get something like Atlantis in the future. I don't know if that's going to happen 100%, but there's potential for it now because of them bringing the whole Chaos story into the mix. So I'm definitely very excited for what they're going to do next, and the Chaos story is a big part of that. Next unpopular opinion comes from DJ. I much prefer Cold War's Crystal tier system over BO6's Augment system. Now yes, there is problems of what do you do when you max out all the tiers, but instead of taking that nearly perfect system and building upon it to fix it, BO6 is downgrading the whole thing whilst suffering the same problem. The ideal solution is to bring the Crystal tier system back, but tie it into something that can be endlessly spent on, maybe even Gobblegums themselves. So my issue with the Black Ops Cold War tier system wasn't just the fact that once you finish the grind, you're kind of just done, but it was also the fact that it essentially made you completely overpowered by having all these things that are on you at all times without any sort of like interesting choice being applied to the player. You just kind of go through the stuff and you upgrade all your stuff to tier 5 and that's it, and then everything is overpowered. I don't like that. I like the BO6 augment system because you have to actually make a choice between your major and minor augments. That's what makes the BO6 system so much better to me. I do think having an in-game currency that you can spend on Gobblegums would be pretty cool, I'm not gonna lie. Like some sort of system where you can directly purchase whatever Gobblegum you want with crystals. That would have been fine, and I actually talked about that way before BO6 launch. I think that would have been an interesting system for Gobblegums, but I also am fine with how they handled Gobblegums with BO6 itself, just the fact that you randomly earn them as you're playing. I'm fine with that as well, but in general, having the augment system I think is just 1,000 times better. I respect the opinion, but obviously I disagree. The last opinion here comes from OffSwitch43. I think the armor system as a whole has got to go in zombies. It was added in Cold War to baby the Warzone players into the game, but really is that all it takes for Warzone players to start playing zombies is some armor. I know it sounds like gatekeeping, but I say don't slap your hardcore fanbase in the face, and if you want to play zombies, learn like everybody else did. You don't see field upgrades and Gobblegums in Warzone, do you? So here's my thing. I don't hate armor as much as a lot of people seem to hate it, but I definitely can understand why people are against it. My issue isn't the armor system itself. My issue is, well, first of all, I don't like the fact that we have to manually plate in Black Ops 6, but I also don't necessarily like the fact that it's a copy and paste of the armor system from Warzone, the fact that it looks the exact same and acts the exact same. But an armor system in general, I'm actually fine with. Just kind of change how it looks a bit, change the way you do it. Instead of it being armor plates, why not make it like Dark Ether protection plates or something? Just ridiculous things like that just to make it feel more zombies-like. I mean, even go back to World War II, we had an armor system there, but it was called Geistkraft, and it was like this special like electricity stuff that you like go up to a machine and get it out from the machine. Something like that, just to give it more of a feel to zombies would be really nice, and I think would go a long way. So that is going to do it for the unpopular opinions for Black Ops 6's launch. I will definitely do more videos like this in the future for the DLC maps, but for now, I'm definitely enjoying Black Ops 6's launch quite a bit throughout all the modes, and I hope you guys are as well, but obviously, there are definitely some criticisms that are completely valid. I'm glad a lot of you brought them up in this video. So I will see you guys on the next one. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Peace out, everyone.